Hello, good afternoon, good evening to some of you, good morning to others of you, and welcome to another TM Forum webinar from the Research and Media team here at TM Forum. My name is Mark Newman. I'm a Chief Analyst at TM Forum, and I will be hosting the session today. And we have some fantastic industry leaders with us today. So we'll be having a panel discussion later, but if I can just ask Richard, Volker, and Ryan just to put the cameras on now, just to briefly say hello, so that you can see that there are real people behind those images. So yeah, so I'm going to ask, as I say, Richard, Volker, and Ryan to tell us who they are, what they do, in about 20 minutes time. So it's a hello and goodbye. So if you want to just turn, turn, turn yourselves off again, and we'll bring you in later. So um, the, I can't stress enough how important it is that we have companies such as Cerillion, Red Hat, and Pegasystems who help us to produce the research that we do. This webinar is off the back of a report that we published at the turn of the year. Next slide, please, Maureen. And the report that we published, which is available on the Inform platform, is called Leveraging AI for Service and Value Creation. That report you can click from the recording that you'll get in the next 24 hours to read the report, or just go on to inform.tmforum.org and you can read the report and you can read some great thought-leading contributions from Cerillion, Red Hat, and Pega. So thank you very much for that. The proceedings today are as follows. So I'm going to spend about 20-25 minutes going through some of the highlights of the report. And the webinar very much reflects the report itself. Then we'll break into a panel discussion. That's when you have the chance to pose questions to myself or any of the other panelists. To do that, you simply need to log into the or use the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of the Zoom console here. Put in your question, and we give you a guarantee that we'll answer your question to the best of our abilities. So we may leave time at the end, but I tend to prefer to weave the questions in. It can be a question, but you might similarly have a comment or an observation about the industry, and that's terrific too. It doesn't have to just be a question. Okay, next slide, please, Maureen. So this webinar and the report is specifically about AI for value creation. When we say value creation, there's two ways that AI can create value, i.e., help to generate more revenues. One, it can be seen as being a way of helping to derive new revenues from your core business by better customer experience, better selling, better marketing. That can be one part of value creation. The other part of value creation can be creating new products and services or enhanced products and services. So we're talking today both about enhanced products and services that come from a telco, and we're talking about new products that come from a telco. We're looking across B2C and the B2B landscape. Now, I think in terms of where we as an industry are at with leveraging AI, I think it's probably true to say that most of the focus today and until now has been around driving operational efficiencies, around greater productivity. I think on the traditional predictive AI side, a lot of it's been around automation of network automation operations. And I think particularly around Gen AI, I think it's been two things. It's been focusing on customer operations, customer service, customer operations, and then extending that into sales and marketing. And I think obviously another big part of AI has been simply putting AI into every employee's or many employees' hands so that they can innovate on a personal or a small team level. This graph you're looking at now is a survey we performed probably about 8 or 10 months ago when we asked where operators' main focus today was, or where the main priorities are, or where the greatest potential is around AI. And I think there's nothing particularly surprising there that I think most operators, and this was about, I think, 200 operators, most operators see most potential around customer experience, customer relationship management, customer operations, and around network operations. The new product development is something newer to operators, and it's sort of lagging behind. However, I think at the same time, there's a recognition in the industry that over a period of time, the focus on value creation will become as important as the focus on productivity and efficiency gains. So next slide, please, Maureen. So I think when we're talking about new products and services, new AI infused products and services, there are many questions that operators are asking themselves about their ability to innovate with AI for value creation. So I've just listed some of the main issues that come to mind here. So, my first point, are CSPs any better equipped to create value for their customers using AI than they were, for example, with cloud computing? And there are many analogies, I think, with when we look at AI versus cloud computing. And if we go back to the early days of cloud computing, many telcos attempted to become public cloud providers, ultimately were largely unsuccessful. They are now consumers of cloud computing services. So the question is the industry in any different position for leveraging AI for value creation than it was for cloud computing? Well, all I can do is go by the conversations I have with operators, and I think there is generally a view that that operators might have always been behind the curve when it came to cloud computing, but when it comes to AI, maybe they're not quite so far behind, or maybe some of them are not so far behind. So they're at an earlier stage in the exploitation of AI to play an important role here. That doesn't necessarily make it any easier because they still need to work out precisely what value they can add. But I think there's a feeling that they're not necessarily playing catch up in the same way as they were with cloud computing. Are businesses likely to buy AI transformation services from a company which has not already transformed itself using AI? That's really more, I think, of a B2B question. So I think we use this word AI-driven transformation, both for the telco itself and for telco's customers. And I think as we will see as we go through the slides, many telecoms operators are seeking to deliver managed services, AI managed services to their customers, to different maybe small, medium, large customers. And the question I think the industry needs to ask itself is, well, if you aren't already a major user of AI yourself, if you haven't transformed your own business using AI, then what confidence do I have about buying a service from you to help transform my own business? Can CSPs develop and recruit the right skills to build AI products and services? And I think, again, this isn't a discussion unique to value creation. It's a more broader discussion around AI. But if you are a budding AI researcher, architect, engineer, you may not think of telcos being the first place that you want to go and work. You'd probably be looking at maybe one of the sort of digital native companies first. So, even if telcos want to hire the skills, it's not always easy to hire the right AI skills to develop those products and services. So I think there are some geographic variations in this theme, but I think generally it's proven a challenge to recruit the right people. In today's IP communications world, are there any remaining opportunities for CSPs to drive value or revenues to their traditional voice and messaging businesses? So I think many of the ideas we'll be talking about are focused around using those telco communication services, voice and messaging services. Is it going to be easy for telcos to revive, if you like, those traditional voice and messaging services? Should telcos be investing in those traditional services when the world is moving towards IP? And the last point here, where is the evidence that operators can successfully scale their AI deployments and use cases? So it's worthwhile making the point that telcos have been deploying AI use cases in different areas for many years, for sort of 6 or 8 years, but they've tended to be bolt-on use cases, and they've tended not to be deployed at scale. If you're going to be developing new products and services, that necessarily means at scale. Do telcos have the skills, the right operational capabilities to do that? So that's just a bit of an opening context. Now let's dive into the different product areas. So Maureen, next slide, please. So I spent some time late last year trying to think about, well, how on earth do I categorize this world of AI infused products and services for telecoms operators? And I struggled with this because you can have a B2C and B2B split. That's not really quite big enough. So I wanted to have something a little bit more segmented. So what I came up with was this idea that that I had four, I guess, product areas, product categories, as you can see from the light grey boxes. So reading from the bottom, AI infrastructure, foundational models, SLMs, LLMs, AI enhanced network connectivity, and then application services and products. So they are my four product areas. And the way I've tended to think about this is that you can deliver those product areas via platforms and via managed services. So I see the platforms and managed services being almost like a delivery capability, but these horizontal boxes being the product areas. I also think, when we're thinking about telcos having product strategies that are sustainable, give them long-term abilities to play in an area, it's going to be a function of telcos being able to add value through their unique data sets. So, you can't have any discussion around AI without thinking about what data assets do telcos have, what can they leverage? And I think, as I say, for telcos to have sustainable advantage, they need to reuse these unique data assets. And I think I'll be speaking to, I think, some of the experts on the panel later on about what those unique data assets might be. So next slide, please, Maureen. So the first category I want to talk about is it's actually combining two of those horizontal categories in the previous chart. Remember, the bottom one I had was AI infrastructure. Then another one I had was enhanced AI networks. And so these kind of come together, which is why I'm looking at them as a single area, if you like. And so there's a term that actually someone called Laurent Leboucher, who's a senior a network executive at Orange, has coined, and he says AI for networks, networks for AI. So when we think about the network and the value that AI can bring to networks, there's two parts to it, and they do overlap. But on the one hand, it's useful to think about the ways in which telecoms operators can use AI to embed into the network and the operational tools that manage the network to make the network itself more valuable. So AI adding value to the network so you can sell more connectivity or higher price connectivity or services on top of connectivity. And the obvious ones that come to mind there are concepts such as network as a service, network slicing. I think one of the vendors now calls it differentiated connectivity. So the idea that you can give people a connectivity experience far closer to their specific requirements rather than giving them a generic network experience. And there are all sorts of capabilities within AI that enable you to respond quickly to a customer demand for specific network attributes. So that, I guess, is the first category. The second category, using AI to help operators better utilize their network capacity and at the same time free up spare AI computing capacity sold to third parties. This, unashamedly is a concept that NVIDIA has introduced. So the idea that operators can build a combined AI and 5G network And as an operator, you build out your network for, let's say, 5G. But as we know, every telecoms network tends to be underutilized at certain times of the day. Operators have to build out networks that cope with peak demand. So there's always unused capacity. And so the thought process here is that if you think of your network as a computing network, then when the network is not being used to carry fixed and mobile customer traffic, it can be used to carry AI workloads. So that's an interesting concept. And there's players such as I think SoftBank actually has been quite public about its plans for that. And there have been other operators, I think, which have joined NVIDIA in this concept. That I think is also you know part of the NVIDIA strategy with operators, also building these AI factories. So it's kind of like an extension, I guess, of that strategy of building AI factories. The third category here, building network capabilities based on enterprise requirements for originating and terminating AI traffic and monetizing this demand. So I think what a lot of network teams are now trying to think about and think through is, if we take it as a given that there's going to be a massive growth in the usage of AI from consumers, businesses in the years ahead. The question then becomes, well, where are those AI workloads running? Where is the processing taking place? And based on where it's taking place, that's going to have an impact on the network. So operators need to think about where precisely they need to plan, I guess, for this growth in network and network computing. So if we go to the next slide, Maureen. So this discussion has led to a rethinking about edge and edge computing. So how the narrative goes is that many enterprises will want to put their AI workloads both close to their own business and close to the network to guarantee performance, security, latency. So if that is the case, if that compute needs to be right next to the network, does that therefore give telecoms operators the opportunity to play in the edge computing space? And I've said here, is it time to dust off those edge computing investment plans? I've phrased it in that way because in reality, the edge computing strategy that was part of the 5G multi-access edge computing 5G MEC strategy, which was very much being talked about if you go back to 2018, 2019, 2020, and it just hasn't really materialized. That demand for public MEC hasn't really happened. Particularly as I think the computing platforms have gone on premise for those companies that need sort of latency, security, sovereignty, etc. So I've taken this as a quote from Hans Vesterberg, who's the CEO of Verizon, and Verizon was one of the operators that was very aggressively pursuing a public and a private multi-access edge computing strategy. And I think, as Hans Vestberg says here, they were very early off the mark with it. It's been underwhelming, the demand, but they are now saying, well, if this demand does materialize, we're in a good position to be built out this edge computing capability. So that's an interesting discussion. Next slide, please, Maureen. So if we look at this broad category, applications, products, and services. So I think in practice, when we think about applications, products, and services, telecoms operators have had a tough time building new value-added products and services. They've been endeavoring to expand beyond voice messaging connectivity for the last 10, 15, 20 years without too much success. There are pockets of success in some countries, but I would say it's generally been challenging. And now I think we can be pretty sure that there will be an explosion in new AI infused products and services. Can telcos generate revenue from those new products and services? Well, there's two ways of thinking about that. There's reselling other people's products and services. That might be via your own portal, via a marketplace, or there's building your own products and services. So these are just some examples of some of the products and concepts that have been discussed by operators, often in partnership with hyperscale service providers. So when we think about enhanced voice services, so I mentioned of Microsoft there. RCS, Rich Communication Suite, is this telco next generation messaging service, which is moving to IP. So uh, I think so. What this discussion looks like is if we are saying that telcos are trying to modernize their traditional, their legacy voice services and integrate with them with services such as Teams, for example, then maybe there's then a chance to add incremental services, value-added services on top of those voice services. So I think we're all familiar with with what you can do in an IP voice world now, with with voice recordings, transcriptions, translations. Well, is there an opportunity for telcos to offer those services to their existing customers using their existing telephone devices rather than using computing devices? So that's the thought process. And I think many operators are launching demos, trials of these. Not clear what the business model is yet, but I think many feel that if you can add some value, at least you have a chance of maybe slowing that movement away from your own services to third-party services. The next category, concierge services. Sorry, Maureen, same slide. So concierge services. This is the idea that you can use these new AI tools driven by Gen AI to help manage your everyday lives. So if there was a way of bridging from your voice and messaging services into other tools that help you to manage, such as calendar tools, meeting tools, recording tools, callback tools, that then you can help to deliver some sort of concierge services. And that could be for a specific vertical market. It could be for an SME market, for example. So again, these are concepts and ideas that are being discussed between, I think, operators and particularly hyperscale service providers. Switching into the B2B market, I think there's a term which is being talked about a lot now, which is AIoT, artificial intelligence or artificial intelligence of things, AIoT. And so again, there's different ways of looking at this, but this idea of using the intelligence that's offered by AI with, let's say, video capabilities, it's a pretty interesting marriage. And many telcos are already exploring the idea of combining, as I say, concepts such as video camera, video-driven IoT, let's say in a 5G world, with artificial intelligence. And so now I've mentioned that Vodafone uses this term sight as a sensor. So you're using camera to create insights rather than the video in itself being a value, if that makes sense. And the last category here I've put is cybersecurity services. So many large operators around the world already have pretty significant managed security services, and AI is clearly enhancing the capabilities of those security services. So I think telcos have a chance to build more value into what they're doing. Next slide, please, Maureen. Monetizing large language models, we're probably all familiar with concepts such as there's the Telco AI Alliance, which I think is South Korean telco SK Telecom with Deutsche Telekom, EAN, Singtel, building a large language model specifically for telco, and then I guess hoping to license that in terms of selling that LLM to telcos. You don't necessarily have to build your LLM from scratch. You could be training an LLM for specific market segments within a country. So I think some operators are doing that. And then I think another way in which telcos, I think when we think about telco is a global business. It's hundreds, thousands of languages, and so I think telcos, and actually sort of very recently, I think we've seen Orange, which is working with a hyperscale service provider to try to help train models in certain languages coming out of the African market, for example. So I think telcos in countries where there's a language which hasn't been used extensively to train a model might feel that there's opportunity for them to play a role in that. But I think generally this is pretty niche. We don't see too many more players entering the LLM small language model space. It's a question of just how you get the most out of the existing models. Next one, please, Maureen. So when we start thinking about precisely how we deliver services to customers, many telcos are building platform strategies, and I think we'll need to go into this in detail in the conversation in a minute. But when we think about the platform business model in relation to value creation, there's two obvious things that come to mind to me when we think about platforms. One, a platform can be a platform which becomes a marketplace to resell third-party products and services. That could be one approach. But a platform can also be a platform which sits on top of tens or hundreds of large language models and small language models. And the platform chooses which is the most cost-effective and accurate large language model for a specific use case. And many telcos are building these internal platforms, their own requirements, and then looking to externalize that platform to third parties. So yes, so I think platform necessarily will be a key way of telcos to deliver AI services. Next one, please, Maureen. Um, Maureen, next slide. Thank you. And so I mentioned at the start managed services, and many operators are investing in AI infrastructure because they believe that it gives them the learnings to help to build a stronger managed services capability. So clearly, enterprise customers have a thirst demand for support for assistance in leveraging AI. Will they go to telcos is a question. Why would you go to a telco for assistance on AI? So I think there are a number of questions that telcos need to answer, and I'm not going to go through the questions here. You can look at them afterwards. But I think the key one here is telcos working out where do they have a right to play in this B2B market for managed services. And I think many of them are thinking about something like the SME market. Every SME is going to have a need for some sort of AI assistance expertise. The large SIs probably don't want to focus at that market segment. It's where telcos have existing trusted relationships. Maybe that SME market is somewhere that you can go. Maybe telcos need to partner with the hyperscalers to go to those markets. But I think that's certainly a big focus. Maureen, next slide, please. So just a few findings before we move on to the panel. So, what's it going to take for telcos to be successful? Well, I think in B2B, building your own internal capabilities is going to be pretty important. I think I said at the start, if you're a large enterprise looking for a partner to help on your AI journeys, you're going to want to see that that partner has itself used AI to transform its business. So interestingly, if we think about areas such as customer service operations, many telcos are endeavoring to use AI to improve the efficiency, the experience of their CRM teams. If you can crack that, maybe you're there then creating a capability, you can then resell that expertise, that knowledge to your customers. Creating roles and accountabilities for value creation. I mean, when we think about telcos being consumers, buyers of cloud or AI, that's something that can sit centrally within an IT team, for example. But when we think about value creation sits within B2C and B2B. So telcos need to find a way of having individuals, teams, capabilities that sit within the lines of business so they can work out what the best approach is to generating value from AI infused products and services. Improving partnership capabilities, I think particularly when it comes to new product service applications, telcos are going to have to partner, they're going to have to resell. Um, Telcos have traditionally found it quite hard to be good dynamic partners. Often the partnership model just hasn't worked particularly well. By pick your battles, I mean if you're thinking about managed services, for example, um, you're not going to be able to serve all market segments. So decide where you can add value, maybe via your data, for example, which I mentioned before, the SME market being maybe a good place. Become a retailer of AI-infused products and services. Many operators are already building marketplaces, so it would make sense to for that to be somewhere where you capitalize on this explosion in new AI products and services. Leveraging their assets, so leveraging your data assets, your network assets, your trust, reliability, nationality assets. We haven't talked about sovereign cloud in this discussion, but I think many of those telcos investing in AI infrastructure are doing so because they see a strong market emerging for sovereign AI, which I think is a reasonable assumption that there will be demand for that. Rethink your edge strategy. So I think many operators are dusting off their edge plans, but I think edge strategies were not particularly successful first time around. So how are you going to play it differently this time? It might mean more of a partner play than telcos thought about first time around. And the last point, don't get swept up in the AI infrastructure arms race. It's there's a lot of companies out there investing in AI infrastructure. So I would say that being a pure AI infrastructure play is probably quite a tough place to be. If that play can be accompanied by a B2B play, then maybe there's a good chance of success. Okay, so they're just a few thoughts. Now, if I could ask Richard, Volker, Ryan, and to put the cameras on, and we can go through some questions and answers. So sorry I took a bit longer than I expected. So thank you for your patience, gentlemen. Um, Maybe if I could ask you all just to say a little bit about yourself, your company, and what you're doing in AI that's going to help the value creation. So in no particular order, and looking at where I see my thumbnails lined up. Ryan, I'm going to go with you first.
All right, thank you, Mark. So I'm with Pegasystems, and I'm the industry market leader for the communications industry. A little bit about Pega. So we are the world's leader in enterprise AI decisioning and workflow automation. Now, what does that mean? That's a word salad, right? Basically, what we do with our clients is we take their objective and we understand with them how to apply the right AI at the right time to solve the right problem. And then we add into that AI workflow automation. And when those two things come together, where you can make a decision with AI and then you can execute on that decision to meet the objective, we see incredible results at clients like Verizon, Deutsche Telekom, T-Mobile, Singtel, global CSPs all around the globe. So it's a great company. And we do a lot of great things with a lot of CSPs. One area that you didn't touch on in the value of AI that I did want to point out that Pega does really well is all around creating value with customer engagement. So how do you use more traditional predictive and adaptive AI to look at the insights that you can get around your customers and then determine what's the best way to engage, whether that's via digital, whether that's via a call center rep, and making sure that you're doing that with empathy and with context so that you're meeting the customer's result and the business's result as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan, and thanks for pointing that out. And I think you're right. I didn't really talk about that, and I think it's probably fair to say that there is probably more focus today on enriching those customer relationships and deriving revenues through better customer experience with more lifetime value, through maybe cross-sell, upsell. That's probably a bigger focus today than products and services, which is what I focused on, but that's a point well made. Thank you. Richard.
Mark, good afternoon. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Richard Doughty, I'm the head of sales for Cerillion Technologies, and we are a BSS and OSS provider to operators around the world, about 80 operators in more than 40 countries. And with regards to AI, what we've been doing over the last year and now doing our first deployments of this, production deployments, is putting AI into the products to make them increasingly frictionless to use. And there's a big focus on that ease of use and breaking down the interface. So instead of having to put punch cards in 50 years ago or type commands into a keyboard, you can now talk to it. And then maybe, of course, the next step on from there in a few years is thinking. But right now, the talking, and in any language, whatever's convenient. And then using that ease of interface with things like catalog to then help create products far faster. So reduce that time to market from weeks, maybe where it was 20 years ago, to days, really down to minutes now. And the biggest barrier to launch being that quality control and acceptance, the ability to actually take an idea from the brain to the screen now is a matter of moments.
Yeah.
And that's where we're focusing at the moment.
Richard, thank you. And Volker.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Volker Tekmaier. I'm product marketing manager in Red Hat's global telco marketing team. And yeah, what we provide is basically a common telco application platform. And we will talk about platforms later, I guess, a little bit more because there are many platforms. But this platform really is designed to help service providers to deploy, develop, run, and operate any application and any AI-infused applications basically anywhere, at the edge, private clouds, hybrid clouds, multiple clouds, actually any public cloud, which I think is key for AI because it will run in all these places. And it's an open platform, and I focus on that because, as we heard in the presentation, there's a lot of new technology. So this platform needs to be able to bring in new technology without making it too complicated. There are new vendors coming up with new ideas. They need to be able to be put onto this platform. I also, when service providers look at building solutions, there's not a single vendor that can provide the complete solution. So there will be plenty of partners involved to actually build these cool things. And of course, AI initiatives need to show tangible business outcomes fairly quickly. So it's key to really help service providers operationalize AI at scale and do this securely. And that's where we come in. And from a platform point of view, you can probably see our platform underneath all these other platforms that we probably will talk about later as we try to decipher this, because the service providers will sell something. There's a storefront, and then there are various orchestration, OSS, we heard that, BSS, and then, of course, application and infrastructure. So we are sitting somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I'm actually going to start with a question from the audience, because I always think that if I get this out there first, and you're all going to be encouraged to send in your questions. So this is a question from Jack, and Jack, thank you for your question. Any thoughts on agentic AI and potential leveraging with edge compute? Anyone like to pick that one up, or you can think about it or come back later? I'll leave it entirely up to you. But if anybody wants
I'll split it in half and take the agentic piece, if that's all right, and the edge compute might be better left to somebody else. But absolutely, that is part, I think, the high level concierge services, Mark, that you were describing in the report and earlier on. That ability to inject assistance either in the form of information or in the form of action into a, for example, customer service process where you're a CSR, you have a customer on the phone, you're servicing a request or a query, and the ability to present or have the AI present all the information to make that process better, more seamless, faster, with a greater outcome, but more beneficial outcome. And that's through presenting information the AI is using on analytics, with sourcing information from multiple data sources, from taking decisions on that information that don't require human input, presenting a decision, and all of that happening within a typical user journey of, I'd like to buy a new service, I'm moving house, and what do I need to do, etc.
Great, thank you. Anyone else like to pick up on that?
Yeah, I would add on to that, and I'll go to what Volker said about platforms, right? I think agentic AI is going to be really powerful but we can't lose sight of that platform orchestration. And to Richard's point, what is that customer journey? So even if it's at the Mac site, if it's more in customer care, I don't want to go back to the bot days where we had bots running all over the place and nobody knew where they were and we would have outages. I want to have a more orchestrated agentic framework that allows these things to work together to really meet that outcome, whether it's for the customer or for the business.
Great, fine, thank you.
Yeah, I
Volker,
also would agree. Yeah, just to bring in the edge aspect, for sure. I think edge is key, especially when you want to bring in various data. Where's the data? You don't want to move all the data to a central location, so you want to keep it in certain areas. So I think from a deployment point of view, the flexibility is key. It's either edge or it's a private cloud, or it could even be a public cloud if you want to start something in the beginning at a small scale. And it's also key to think about this, how to combine this with other AI models and tools. What we see is, well, what we expect to see is that service providers will have hundreds of AI models. They will leverage agentic AI, predictive AI, Gen AI, and they might actually combine it depending on what they need to, in the end, build a service. So not to make things more complicated, but yes, it's important, edge is important, and it will be a part of a much bigger puzzle.
But maybe we can actually round off the edge discussion here, Volker. And I mean, I'm sure you've been, as Red Hat, you've been involved in many conversations in the last 5, 7 years in terms of telcos and edge. I mean, where do you think the operator industry is today in terms of that edge computing opportunity? And does AI represent an opportunity to make it happen this time around?
I think you summarized it very well with the quote from Verizon. They start building it out. But maybe there was too much of an expectation. We build it out and then the business will come.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's not that easy. Will AI play a role? I think it has a big potential to play a role because there is, again, a lot of data being generated. And I think now service providers understand the value of this data and actually how to extract value out of this data, where the data is actually generated. So that's an aspect for AI, for the edge. You mentioned SoftBank and NVIDIA. It's a very interesting concept. Just bringing AI processing power out to the edge and play with it, using it for the network as well when it's idle, using it for something else. And this in combination with not just looking at GPUs, but our general CPUs, because you can run a lot of AI on normal computing processor units. You don't always need GPUs. So now edge has a lot more power and capabilities and offers or opens up a lot more possibilities for new business opportunities. But in the end, you have to find the business and run the business, not just the technology. It's both.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Volker. Shall we talk about data and data sources? And again, my conversation with operators.
Oh, Mark?
Whatever capabilities they have. I mean, can we be specific about that?
Mark, we lost you for just a moment. Would you mind repeating the question?
Net connection unstable. So hopefully it's more stable now. So where was I? I was talking about oh yeah, data source.
Speaking of data.
Speaking of data, shall we talk about data sources? I'm
Talk
sure,
about data sources.
I'm sure we can step into the breach there.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Well, let me. I've probably got the talking stick. Let me start, and then I'll hand over to Ryan and Vocal. I think data sources are very important, but data sources aren't the be all and end all of Gen AI. I'll come back to something we're doing. It can also be in just the processing of data they are collecting today. So where we're looking to optimize and make processes quicker, more efficient, require less human input, there's no new data sources required. No. Where we're using all the existing data that businesses are collecting today. We do have some examples where we're collecting novel types of data. And as with many areas of AI, there are attendant issues of copyright. I'll give you an example. A capability we've rolled out now, we're deploying this for an operator, UCOM in Armenia, in fact, for Gen AI assisted product development. You can take a screenshot of a competitor's website, load that to the catalog and say, build me that and make it 10% cheaper. and it will just do that from the customer's website. Now, lots of issues around that, but that's a new type of data source we're bringing in, and possibly not our data, where we've screen scraped that off the public internet. But of course, copyright is a common issue for the LLMs at the moment anyway.
Yeah, absolutely right.
But yeah, so for a lot of it, I think the existing data is more than sufficient.
Yeah. And so, yes, I mean, I think, again, I think when we think about data, there's the data sources that telcos already have, many of which sits in existing BSS and OSS systems. And then there's new data that you can start to use, particularly in a Gen AI world, where it might be structured or unstructured. So, and I guess we're at the very early days of actually exploiting that data, working out what it is and what we have. So, I mean, Ryan, any thoughts? Ryan, if you want to go first and move on to Volker?
Yeah,
Data sources.
yeah, sure. So thank you. There's a lot of emotion around data whenever data comes up. And what I find is really helpful is to take a step back and to really think about, when you're using like more predictive AI, there's usually a set of data that you want to get your hands on so that you can create the best insights off that data. But it's a set. It's not everything that you have. Where on the contrary, something like a knowledge type application that, Richard, you and I were talking about that our companies have on how we can interact with a set of data within our company, whether it's financials, case studies, sales information, whatever that might be. Then it's really powerful that you put that data in and then you do validation on the responses that you get back. You don't take it at first glance right now, but you do your extra validation, but it accelerates that upfront work in order for you to really move through the innovative process a lot faster. So I think, you just got to kind of take a step back when you hear the word data and really think about what is it you're trying to accomplish? And then how do you go and get that data that you really need to accomplish that goal?
So I think many of the telcos I speak to, what they're thinking is that if they can add their own telco specific data, either from the network or from billing records or from customer conversations, or it could be unstructured data about what, how good their service is on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. If you can somehow add that to existing maybe third-party products and services, you might have something unique and sustainable. And so that was a point I was trying to make at the start here, which is I think when it comes to products and services, well, there's so few barriers now to anybody building a service to offer to a customer or a consumer or an enterprise customer. What gives telcos any sort of uniqueness that's going to give them sustainable advantage? So that I think is when many of them are thinking about data. So, what is that data? Where does it come from? I mean, Volker, I mean, do you think about this space at all?
Oh yes. Actually, I agree with everything that was said before. It's like, really, what is that you try to achieve? There's plenty of data there. I think the challenge is how to get the data out of the network and out of the various databases into this AI thing, for lack of better words, to actually analyze the data, making sense out of it, but also collecting data across organizational silos. I think that's one of the biggest problems today as well, that the data is locked away and it's very difficult to cross-correlate it. And what we have seen is, especially, what do you want to do with this data? Sometimes I feel like, okay, we have all this data now, use it for whatever you want to use it. But I think there are already more things that can be done with this data. For example, and actually T-Mobile just announced that, where they look at all this data to basically decide where to update their networks, where to put additional resources and capacity to make it more efficient in their investment. There are other conversations where you can actually look at customer data, trouble tickets, when customers call in and they complain about problems. It's not just fixing the problems, but also thinking about, okay, what are they complaining about, and turn this into, okay, what are they actually looking for? And this way, creating new services or optimizing service using that information. There is the discussions to look at the data of what customers are actually doing on the network. What kind of IoT devices are they connecting? Which ones are very popular in which areas, and use that as information to think about new service offerings. So that's really like to Ryan's point, like what's the business outcome? And there, by playing this kind of a ping pong to see what data is available and what can I do with AI, and then see, okay, what business opportunities are there and is there additional information? I think the advantage also from generative AI compared to years before is being able to analyze unstructured data with new processing capacities. You can do this at a scale that was impossible before. So now there are a lot more opportunities than there have been, let's say, 5 years ago.
Yeah. I guess some of the things that you touched upon there are relate to the organizational structure and where AI skills expertise sit in the organization. And you know, in my slides, I went through some of the ideas that telcos have thought about, but actually, there may be lots and lots of other ideas that we're only ever really going to capture if the right people and the right teams in the right part of the company can get access to these capabilities. So that we talk about AI democratization quite a lot.
Mhm.
And so, maybe this discussion that we're having shouldn't be around specific product areas. It should be, what exactly are the tools needed by different product teams to allow them to play around and just play around with customers and work out what might be a product area that can scale. So I guess in terms of making what I've just said into a question, again, all of you sell to operators, but I'm guessing it's quite difficult for you to reach the product teams, the innovation teams, because traditionally, I guess this world of IT, BSOSS has been selling into a central function.
Yeah, those certainly they're not an overlap with us. Yeah.
So how do you address that? How can you change that?
Now you talk to everybody. In the end, you have to, because I think key for AI to be successful in a company is really to identify first with the service providers, what is it they try to achieve? Again, what Ryan said earlier, it's like, what is it you want to do with AI? Just putting in AI in there to claim, well, I have AI capabilities will not get you anywhere. And having
But Volker, I would disagree there. So I think that there's two approaches, and one yourself and Ryan have described is going to the customer and saying, tell us your problems. And then with the use of AI, we will address those. And the other approach, which I think is equally valid and possibly has more value in the short term, is one we've taken, which is to actually say, all right, actually, we're specialists in this area. We actually know the industry. We know what we're doing. So we have decided on ways to use AI, and we have put that in the software. So now that software has AI within it. And you as an operator, you don't need to be a specialist in AI to use that at all, because we've made it frictionless as well. So you need to know your job, and then you just talk to it like you would a colleague. But that's a very different way of then delivering the AI value into the business much, much faster.
That's true, but I think you already decided what the objective is of your.
You're right. We did exactly. So we said we'll decide the objective, and because flattering ourselves, we're experts.
Yeah, and that's barely exactly, I think, where I was going. It's like, do you want to use it to achieve operational efficiency, or do you want to use AI to drive new revenue streams? Based on that kind of you focus on certain areas. And I guess if you try to go for new revenue streams, it might be a little bit more complex, because you need to identify what is a new business versus if I go for operational efficiency, I just look at my current situation and see, you know what, I need to drive cost of my operation. Yes.
Yeah,
and
it may well be that it's a phased process. So going back to the point I was trying to make about, a large enterprise is not going to buy AI advisory services or integration services from a telco unless the telco has integrated AI themselves. So maybe we just need to accept that the starting point is AI for productivity, efficiency, CRM. And then once we're really good at doing that, then there might be things that are more marketable.
And if I could risk verging into philosophy, one of the things about AI is it has, the generative AI that we're all very accustomed to using. It has subsumed all of human knowledge, but there's no originality there.
No.
So if we're looking for innovation, it can maybe apply massive compute to identify correlation in large data sets, and out of that understanding of correlation, an idea may emerge. But in terms of true originality, I don't feel we will find it there. So we're still dependent on those humans for whatever it might be, new revenue streams or other ideas.
Yeah, and Richard, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's a balance between, the speed of AI, especially right now, is happening so fast.
Yeah.
And
Oh
so
God, it's just crazy.
bringing in expertise like you referenced, like you're the SMEs in this area, right?
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
working with some SIs in the network space,
And
particularly,
like
and the
in that
SMEs in
area,
that.
and of course, like
Yeah,
Volker was saying, you need lots of these. Yeah.
exactly. And you bring that expertise, that advisory of here's the latest technology, here's what we can do. I think there's a nuance there to balance between understanding your customer and being that type of advisor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm picking up the second question from Darlu's, which I hesitate on because Darlu's, it's a good question. Hello, could you please give me some specific case study examples of implementations which could be inspirations of how to use AI in telcos? Especially maybe you've got some case studies from wholesale fiber network carriers. Well, let's leave the second part out. But I mean, the first question is a completely valid one, which is,
Yeah.
are there examples that we can find of things that are being done today in the value creation space? So,
Well, I would, on our side, I'd point to the massive enhancements we've made in things like the catalog for generative AI for product creation, for workflow and provisioning, common SOM, where we're talking about different data sources. You can now draw on a whiteboard, whiteboard out that process with colleagues, and then just send that whiteboard image to the workflow engine, which will build all of those for you. In terms of specific instances, I'll name a couple of customers. Due to the long sales cycles of our industry, which are horrific for those who care, 18 months or worse, we are only just deploying the R&D we did in sort of 2023, if that makes sense. So I'd point to Paratus in South Africa. So they're a 7-country B2B, B2C, multi-quad play operator, and we're rolling out AI-enabled catalogs and workflow for them. And then also I mentioned one in Armenia, a 1 million subscriber operator, Ucom, who we are now implementing that for as well. So there's specific examples, long projects, as everybody on this call will know. So check back in 12 months for those.
thank you. Ryan, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, we've done one recently with a US carrier that is around outage deflection. And so using AI, we're taking in a bunch of network unstructured data and looking for patterns. And then being able to take action on the patterns that hit certain thresholds or certain insights. And we can automate depending on which path it needs to go, right? It may need to open a ticket somewhere to a network support organization to look at something. It might be notifications to a customer about the situation. And we've been able to deflect over 200,000 calls in the call center and identify outages 15 minutes earlier than when they could before. So very practical, and I know it's a struggle for a lot of carriers is how do we get ahead of these outages so that we don't have people calling in? We can deflect calls, but even better, we can fix it before it becomes an outage.
And that's a win-win, isn't it, right? You not only deflect the call and lower your cost to serve, but the customer's happier as well. So,
Exactly.
Maybe,
Volker, can I give you the last word?
yeah, maybe 3 quick ones for new revenue generation, because on the OpEx side, there are plenty. But interesting one is video recognition services to use this either for airport security, great edge application, by the way, or even for retail business to catch shoplifters a lot faster. Another interesting one is actually was one of the TM Forum Catalyst projects, Smart Agriculture, to really see where AI can come in there. Again, image recognition, video recognition, also great edge application. So that's kind of on the video side. And then there are others, of course, but those are the ones which are probably more real.
Great.
And Volker, if I could just add on quickly to sort of
Yeah.
tie those and the edge computing. Mark, you talked about the corporate concierge service, and Ryan and I were talking beforehand. This is what we're both building at Pega and Cerillion internally. Our own private models to serve the company. I'm a big believer that these will be in demand from those SME organizations, your 50 to 500 size organizations who won't have the capacity to do it internally. And the telcos will be in a position to offer those as a service with a massive new revenue stream attached.
Wonderful. So I can see we've ticked round to the hour. So
it goes
thank
too
you so
fast.
much. And thank you for the questions. And Ryan, Richard, and Volker, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your support with the
Sure.
report. It's much appreciated, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thanks, Mark.